If whoever wants to talk, just grab it. Cool.
Dom, I appoint you to the holder of the microphone.
I am the holder of the microphone. It's a perk of being the lead designer is that you don't need to hold the microphone. Isn't that right?
It's right.
Get the principal campaign designer to hold it for you.
Alright, I think we're ready.
Principal microphone holder.
Are you already filming?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Alright, so Attila Total Warrior. I'm just. I can't even talk anymore.
A new game is born.
Alright, so Attila Total War. It's set during Attila's reign. What do you think was the key factor in choosing this time period versus another time period, would you say?
It's a nice follow-up to Rome, because essentially this whole era is very interesting. It's the brink of the Dark Ages, the very beginning of the new medieval Europe, and still it's connected in many ways with Rome Total War. So I think it's very nice that we could connect these two products so nicely, despite of the 400 years difference between the two. So,
And Attila's obviously an important character in history. Was partly responsible for the series of events that led to the fall of the Western Roman Empire, at least. So yeah, it's an important period that we really want to explore in Total War, and also a good excuse to do what we consider to be the most apocalyptic Total War. Lots of destruction and fire, and
yeah, essentially he's one of the great leaders, great generals who built up an empire by themselves. All of them are known by their contemporary people alike. So think about like Alexander, or think about Julius Caesar, Augustus. Think about Attila, or later on Genghis Khan or Napoleon. These are big people of the history who built up a huge empire by themselves. Yeah. To repeat myself.
yeah, it's all good.
That said, would Attila's Hunnic faction, what kind of advantages in battle would it have against, say, like the Western Romans?
Well, their sort of core roster is very mobile, so sort of quite cavalry heavy, archers and stuff. So good at harassing and generally running circles around the enemy.
Yeah, and they're quite versatile, because their core roster, as Dom said, the usual like nomadic type, but what the Huns did was essentially subjugating people, used slave soldiers, so they had a very wide variety of troops at their disposal, and that was quite threatening and quite hard to fight against.
I mean, he even came to appropriate a bunch of siege equipment and make use of that against the Romans towards the latter years of his warmongering, much to the obvious distress of the Roman forces.
Yeah, they were the first nomadic people who could actually pose threat to cities, because previously and later on these nomadic people came cities or in the medieval time the castles just basically closed the doors and waited until the threat is passing away. But Attila was someone who could lay siege to settlements and could conquer them later on more by just going there and being the threat that I could take your settlement if I want.
Awesome. So aside from like the Western Romans and the Huns, what other kind of factions would we see in campaign and custom battles?
Well, we're not ready to reveal the full roster of factions, but obviously this is also the migration period. There are many barbarian kingdoms making their way across the world, driven by climate change and also the warmongering of the Huns. So you expect to see a wide variety of barbarian factions. The east, there's still quite a few empires out there, all the Sassanids primarily,
or basically vassals of or allies of the Sassanids, and there are the Romans. So you can see this around the same playable factions as in Rome and Rome too.
Same
and
number.
same number,
Not the same factions.
not the same, yeah. And there are similar amount of culture variety. So
Cool. What kind of like changes are we expecting gameplay from this title versus say Rome 2? Like some key differences in just like different features.
There are a lot to speak about now and a lot to reveal later. But one, for example, this whole climate change. So we take the seasonal change further, and this time around is not just seasons are changing throughout the year, but as we are progressing into the campaign, this essentially there's a global cooling happening, and the snow line is moving more towards the south, and that changes the gameplay on the campaign. Your food production and your tax income will decrease, and that can trigger migration. We changed the essentially the public order system, decoupled the squalor and sanitation from the public order system, because in Rome it was more important to picture the panem and circenses, the bread and circuses type of public order, and here we are focusing a bit more on diseases with squalor and sanitation. So if you neglect the settlements, then diseases can spread, and those diseases can be lethal and spread through your empire.
Something else we're quite excited about is siege escalation, which you saw in the example battle was an escalation level 2 situation. So the longer you siege a settlement, it gets progressively more and more damaged as your troops are, sapping the walls, just doing military actions, besides what you're actually engaging in actual battles. So if you fight a city straight away, you're going to come up with the standard city battle, pristine walls. You'll see civilians in the street who may take the fight to the enemy or just run away. After a period of sieging, though, you go in. Some of the towers will be destroyed. There'll be evidence of military camps on the outside. The walls will be damaged a little bit, or weakened at least. And then the next stage up from that, which is, as you saw, there are breaches in the wall. There's really very little hope for the defender to sit back and wait for the walls to be climbed or for the doors to get smashed down. Basically, the enemy can just make a beeline for the breaches and go straight for you without any difficulty, really.
Yeah, and this damage is persistent. So what happens is, as you destroy the settlement, you load out the campaign up, and the destruction remains there. So if you fight the next battle, the destruction is there, and you have to repair it to get rid of it. But it can take a long time and a lot of effort and resources, money, to be able to repair. And it's not just the escalation that damages the city, but in the battlefield or in the battles, you can burn down the settlement. We have now dynamically spreading fire. Fire can just start and destroy the settlement, and this destruction causes morale issues to the defenders. So if you burn down the bigger part of the settlement, defenders might just shatter and run away, because it's like there's no point defending this settlement anymore. It's just a ruin.
But it's not all an uphill struggle for the defenders. We've given the defenders barricades now, so certain predefined streets in the city, you can accumulate a number of barricades that you can place down, and in so doing kind of funnel the approach that the enemy can make. The enemy can destroy these as they come in, and you can mount troops on it to sort of attack them as they come towards you. But it's just another tool in the defender's arsenal to sort of give them an advantage, where obviously the attacker now has a great number of advantages with the escalation and the fire damage causing distress to the defending troops.
Yeah, and barricades can really transform how the battle or the combat happens on the street, because previously street combat was more like a tug of war. It's heavy units are just trying to push, and heavy casualties happen. But now with barricades, you can put a squish unit on the barricade, and the barricade basically holds up a charge. So even if a heavy cavalry comes against your archers, for example, then the charge will be stopped by the barricade, and archers can shoot right up front, just point blank at the cavalry. and even if the barricade starts to fall, then you can safely pull back that unit of archers, put your spearmen or something else in the front, or just fall back to the next barricade, to the next level, and you can really like fight from street to street in your settlement.
Oh, awesome. And can you guys go into more? Can you mention what the desolation feature is for villages, and also can you explain how the family tech is gonna work? Family tree.
We have a concept of Desolate Regions, which is it's effectively a region where the settlement has been razed to the ground.
Or in the beginning of the campaign, there are desolate regions, and that means there's no noteworthy settlement around. It doesn't mean in that case that there's no population at all, but essentially there's no noteworthy settlement.
But so you can effectuate a kind of scorched earth policy on your own region. So an enemy army might be coming in. You don't really want to let them have it because they'll take on your buildings, your infrastructure. They can adapt it to their culture or what have you. So what you can do is effectively abandon it, and this tortures the settlement down to the ground. And that means that whoever's coming in will then have to recolonize it, and this basically starts the settlement from scratch. It's extremely expensive to do. It costs a number of units or a proportion of your manpower, and obviously at that point you then have a level 1 basic, one slot settlement, and you just got to keep expanding it and rebuild it. So it's a great tactic to deny your enemies all that you've invested in making your city, and you get some money back for it as well. So if you're in an extremely dire situation, you can always abandon a region. Hopefully it's not producing enough that the rest of your empire will collapse, but you're making a bit of instant cash that you can then invest elsewhere to develop your infrastructure or your military or what have you.
Yeah. And we did a lot of other features like the building browser. That's very important to plan out how you will build up your settlements.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the family tree. So we've brought this back. Allows you to assess your family, your royal lineage, as it were. Try and bring people from the sort of other great houses or other tribes or whatever into your family to make the most of their influence. Try and further your political gain, which in turn has effects on all your provinces, your public order, unit morale. You want to maintain a balance, which is not maybe too much in your favour, because then you're a tyrant. People will fear you. That will have negative effects as well. But if you lose power because too many of your non-family characters have great influence, then you're going to see sort of diplomatic hits as people lose respect for you. Military morale will drop because the troops have no faith in you and that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a balancing act. And yes, you can adopt characters into your family. You can try and use your family members exclusively to govern provinces, to be generals in the field. But obviously for that, you need to have family members, which means you have to have wives, so you can have kids, and you have to make sure they don't die in infancy and all that kind of stuff, and nurture your family, basically, so that you can keep on top of your power and respect.
Yeah, and in your family, you can have illegitimate children as well. And that can have an effect on your family as well, but they are still resources, so you might want to use your illegitimate son as a governor, because it's still better to use him than a non-family member, but every other family member will be a bit pissed off if you basically legitimize him through this.
Or if you make him your heir, that might upset them as well. But sometimes you have no choice. You need to make sure that to keep your family on top of things, you can't always use the ideal candidate that you'd like to use. But obviously sometimes you're going to have to use characters who aren't part of your family tree, and as a result of that, the balance will be something that sways over the course of a campaign pretty much constantly.
Yeah, and as Dom briefly mentioned it, essentially we changed how edicts work. Essentially now you have to appoint a governor to a province, and that very governor will basically fulfill or enact that edict. So this is how you make edicts, and that governor will represent you on the battlefield. So any garrison battle that happens within that province, the general that governor will be the general. So sometimes if you want to defend the border province, you might want to appoint a high-level general to that province, and he will be much more able to defend.
This character, being a high-level character, would also have more skills under his belt, more traits, maybe better ancillaries, which means that he's also going to have more favourable effects that can improve his effectiveness as a governor as well. So, to choose where to put a character in terms of, being a governor, being a general, an admiral, based on the way you've developed them or how they've developed sort of naturally, randomly through, the course of a campaign, it becomes an important decision.
Yeah, and on the characters, we have the skill trees back, so it's much more easy to see the progression and plan out everything, basically a career for your guys. And we have an effect summary as well, categorized in different categories, and it's much more easy to see what's happening there. And that's the same with the whole household ancillary change.
Yeah, well, the ancillaries in Rome 2, for example, you had a single ancillary, you had a pool, you could sort of share them between characters. Characters now have 3 ancillaries, but they're kind of themed. It's more like an equipment set. You have an item, a piece of apparel, and a companion, which are different categories. And so you can sort of deck out each of your characters with their little retinue, their equipment, and send them into the field. But similarly to the skill trees, we've also gone and made proper development trees for the armies and the navies as well, so tradition trees, which again allows you to look ahead, see which kind of specializations you want to give to that force, and chart a path through and go for it.
And last question, are there any kind of have you guys thought down the road like what kind of online features you're going to have for people who just play multiplayer?
Have we? We have a big new, more like a community feature, this event feed. Essentially, it summarizes everything or records everything that you've done during your campaign. So all the actions with every single asset you have is in this big, huge database, and you can filter it for different time frame. You can use different filters on it, just see all the battles you won, and every single thing is hyperlinked. So if you select, for example, a province, then you can see the history of that province, all the battles fought in that province. If you select one of the battles, you can see all the armies that was involved in that battle. Then if you select one of the armies, then you can see the history of the army, and you can select the general of the army, and you can see the history of the general. So that's a community feature, because you can essentially save and upload this history to the totalwar.com, and there will be different tools to visualize and share it with others. And on the multiplayer side itself, essentially we are supporting multiplayer. Multiplayer will be similar as it was in Rome 2.
We're hoping the new features that we've introduced to the battle will prove interesting enough for the multiplayer community to get their teeth into, and to develop new tactics, new strategies, and the campaign as well.
All the new campaign and battle features are available in multiplayer, so you can use the Scorcher tactic in a co-op or in a versus campaign, or when you are playing a multiplayer battle, you can just burn down the city on the defenders and set up the barricades and play against a player with these tools, and that will be very interesting.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for your time. I really look forward to Attila, one of my favorite time periods, actually. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
How's that microphone doing?
I think the microphone's doing fine. Maybe Attila would like to say something.